Britney Gregory was born on April 1st, 1988, in the small town of Brick, New Jersey. Britney was the youngest in a family of 5 children. Her parents divorced and the children stayed with their father. Britney had good relationships with all her sisters and brothers, but she was especially close to her sister Brianna, who was 4 years older. They were like best friends, helping each other, swapping outfits, and painting nails. Britney was an excellent student in school. Her average grade was 100. She was the best student in school, and teachers believed she had a bright future ahead. She could become a scientist. At the same time, she was modest, cheerful, kind, and sweet. She always helped her classmates, and the girl had many friends. Britney had an unusual dream. She wanted to become a forensic scientist. She was interested in studying evidence at crime scenes. Summer 2004 arrived. 16-year-old Britney, along with her older sister, 20-year-old Brianna, lived with their father, Joe Dunn, in his small house with his new partner, Lori Peterson, not far from the school. The father's house was the last on the street and bordered a wooded area. At that time, the girl was dating an 18-year-old boy named John Fitzgerald. They had been together for almost 2 years. John was a good guy whom Britney's family approved of. They had very warm relationships, and loved ones considered them the perfect couple. On Sunday, July 11th, 2004, Britney's mother and sister Brianna left for the suburbs of Toms River to visit Britney's older brother, who had just had a daughter, and the young parents needed help. Around 8:30 p.m., Britney called her mother's cell phone and asked to be driven to her boyfriend John's house. The girl's voice sounded very upset, as if something had happened. The mother told her daughter that they were far from home and couldn't take her right now, but she could send her sister Brianna to her a little later, who would arrive in about an hour. Britt didn't agree. Brianna was free in 45 minutes and called Britney, but her sister didn't answer. Brianna thought that Britney was either already asleep or had asked someone else to drive her. The sister didn't attach any importance to it and went to bed. In the morning, when Brianna returned home, she discovered that Britney was not at home. However, her things, including her phone, were left in the room. The sister thought that perhaps Britt had stayed overnight at her boyfriend's, but she would have warned her relatives, and how could she leave without her phone? This was completely unlike her. The sister began calling all of Britney's friends to find out if anyone had seen her, but no one knew about Britney's whereabouts. Brianna called her boyfriend John, and he said that the last time he spoke with Britney was on Sunday morning, and she hadn't come to him. Brianna asked the father's cohabitant about Britney, and she replied that she returned home at 10 p.m., and there was no one home. The girl realized that something was wrong and rushed to the police station to report Britney's disappearance. The police didn't take Brianna's concerns seriously. They assumed that her sister might have run away from home or was spending time with friends. Brianna explained to the police that she had called all her friends and her boyfriend. No one had seen Sister Britney. Britney couldn't have run away. She was an excellent student, a homebody who spent most of her time in the library. She never left the house without her parents' permission, and all her things, money, and phone were left at home. Brianna managed to convince the police, and then the detectives took up the search. First, they went to the father's house from where the girl had disappeared to look for clues. They confirmed that Britney's purse with her phone and wallet were left in her room. All her things were in place. No leads were found. The investigators talked to everyone who lived in this house, because usually in such cases, relatives are involved. It turned out that all family members had alibis. Posters with photos of the missing girl were hung all over the city. The police began inspecting the area adjacent to the house. They went around all the houses in the neighborhood, examined yards, and asked neighbors about Britney. The detectives were looking for witnesses who might have seen or heard something. They paid attention to the fact that the house was the last on the street, and there was a wooded area nearby. No one from the neighbors heard or saw Britney that evening, but one neighbor said she saw Britney walking down the street late Friday evening in the dark. This was 2 days before her disappearance and seemed irrelevant, but the investigators noted this information. It contradicted the image of the modest library girl who didn't go out without her parents' permission. What could Britney be doing alone on the street so late? Did her parents allow her to walk at such a time? The police wanted to find out if Britney was really as much of a homebody as her sister described. Sister Brianna, in a conversation with the police, let slip that lately, Britney and John had strained relations. They often quarreled, and on the day of her disappearance, they had argued again, so Britney was upset and wanted to go to John in the evening to make up with him. The investigators became interested in Britney's boyfriend, to whom she was planning to go that evening. They wanted to meet with John and find out if he had seen Britney that evening. The detectives invited the guy to the station for an interview. He confidently stated that the last time he spoke with Britney was on the phone in the morning, and she hadn't come to him. According to him, at the time of the disappearance, John was at the beach with friends, and this didn't please the girl. They quarreled and didn't talk anymore. He also said that he had broken up with Britney a few days ago, but she couldn't accept it, although she knew he was already in a relationship with another girl. John didn't plan to meet her that evening and didn't know she was coming to him, but he shared an important detail. Britney often walked to meet him through the forest that was behind her father's house. When asked about the reason for the breakup, the guy replied that Britney had kissed another guy at a party, and because of that, he dumped her and started dating another girl. The last time he saw her was on July 10th, a day before the disappearance, when she gave him a letter in which she wrote that she wanted to make up. The police asked to see the letter written by Britney, and John gave it to them. In the letter, the girl apologized for her behavior for breaking John's heart and asked to remain friends. The guy seemed sincerely worried and anxious that Britt hadn't been found yet. The police had nothing against him, and they let John go. Later, he successfully passed a polygraph test, and he was excluded from the list of suspects. The story of Britney's disappearance was becoming more and more confusing. As it turned out, the girl wasn't as much of a homebody as her loved ones thought. She went to parties, flirted with different guys, and ran to her boyfriend through the forest in the evenings over a distance of 1.5 kilometers. Perhaps something happened to her in the forest. Searches for the missing girl began in the forest. Most likely, she walked along the trail that started right near her house and led to her boyfriend's house. This was a bike path. Being in the forest in the evening was scary and dangerous. How was a young girl not afraid to walk through the forest in the dark? This raised many questions. The search in the forest lasted 3 days, but nothing was found. The investigation reached a dead end, and then a woman appeared who was in the park that evening with her man. It was quiet, deserted, and there were no cars except one. A Chevrolet Avalanche pickup truck with distinctive wheels drove past them. The woman paid attention to this car and remembered the license plate. The investigators checked the car and found that it was registered to 23-year-old Anthony Geiger. The police began to find out who Anthony was, and it turned out that Anthony was the ex-boyfriend of another of Britney's sisters, Bobby Joe. They broke up a month ago because he was too jealous, and he was too friendly with the missing girl, which was suspicious. Britney's friends recalled that at parties, Anthony always looked at her strangely and tried to flirt with Britney. The last time they all crossed paths was at a lunch where Anthony flirted with Britney again. Anthony began to arouse suspicion among the detectives. They assumed that he might have tracked the girl and kidnapped her. They called the guy in for questioning. Anthony denied being near the forest on the evening of July 11th, but confirmed that he was on good terms with Britney, often crossed paths with her at parties and other places because they were in the same company, but refuted friends' words that he flirted with her. According to him, Britney was too young for him. He understood that perfectly. He just cared about her as a friend, and most importantly, he had an alibi. He spent that evening at home with his new girlfriend. The investigators contacted this girl, and she confirmed Anthony's alibi. The police had no serious evidence against Anthony, and they let him go. The detectives returned to studying the letter Britney wrote to John and noticed alarming notes in the farewell. The investigators began to fear that the girl might have harmed herself because of the breakup with her boyfriend. The parents, learning of this version, denied that their smart, goal-oriented daughter could commit suicide. She loved life too much and had big plans to cross everything out because of a guy. The investigation reached another dead end. The police decided to appeal to the public through the media to find possible witnesses. Police from the entire district joined the investigation to provide assistance. They again began a thorough search of the house
from which the girl disappeared. At this time, Britney's parents decided to actively take up the search themselves. They were tired of sitting by the phone with folded hands, waiting for Britney to call or return home. The parents decided it was time to act. They started by calling around neighboring houses and questioning local residents, but it didn't help. During the thorough search, the police found something interesting in the house.
Hidden in the magazine was a letter with interesting content that Britney wrote for a contest. The girl wrote that she was from a dysfunctional family. Her mother was a drug addict who abandoned her at age 9, and now she has to live with her father and his woman. They have strained relations, and her brother is in prison, and she visits him every weekend. Brit wrote that she is not perfect, but she has a kind heart, and the girl does not want to be like her parents. She chooses a better life for herself, so she dreams of becoming a forensic scientist and helping solve crimes. After reading this letter, the police had new suspects. Britney's family, which had not initially been considered as such. The detectives began to study old members of Britney's family, and it turned out that in the house where the missing girl lived, there was a so-called massage parlor for men, and Laurie Peterson, the father's cohabitant, provided these services. The house was visited daily by different men for intimate encounters. The women had regular clients. It turned out that everyone in the area knew about this, and Laurie herself was not shy about her profession. She handed out her business cards everywhere. Also, neighbors reported that prohibited substances were seen in their house. Perhaps Laurie was engaged in distributing substances. The investigators understood that the teenager didn't disappear just like that. Something clearly happened to her, and she was in trouble. Perhaps one of Laurie's clients who came for services kidnapped Britney from the house. The detectives began to study Laurie's clients, and it turned out that among them were many strange ones. For example, one client came in diapers, and Laurie changed his diaper and fed the man from a bottle. Soon, it was announced on TV that the police had arrested a suspect in the murder of Britney. The mother of the missing girl recognized him. It was 38-year-old Jack Fuller Jr., a family friend for 20 years, who attended all family holidays and was close to them. His daughter was engaged to Britney's brother, who was in prison. Britney's mother was in shock. Why was Jack arrested? And why was he suspected of murdering the missing girl when her body hadn't been found, and loved ones hoped she was alive? They refused to believe that Jack could be involved in this matter. He was very friendly. His children were teenagers and friends with Britney. A couple of months before the disappearance, Britney saved his life. The girl came to visit his daughter, and they found that the man wasn't breathing. Then Britney called 911, and he was saved from an overdose. How could he do something bad to his savior? The parents knew that Jack used and distributed substances. Jack Fuller had been convicted 48 times for possession of substances and thefts. The last time he was sentenced to 5.5 years in prison. The man was released from prison a few years before the girl's disappearance. They thought he could have stolen money for a dose in a hopeless situation. But why would he attack their daughter? He could have taken her ring or chain, but no more. Later, information emerged about how the police got to him. A call came to the police with a tip on Jack Fuller. The caller said that Jack had complained to him about back pain from burying the girl's body in sandy soil, whom he killed. At the same time, Jack told him that this place would never be found, and asked how deep he needed to bury the body so that animals wouldn't smell it. The police invited the informant to the station, asked him to meet with Jack, and record a conversation about the murder. He agreed and met with Jack. The informant managed to record a conversation where Jack claimed that he had buried the body deep enough, and it definitely wouldn't be found in this wilderness. He confessed that he killed Britney because she saw his face, but didn't specify details. Also, Jack said that he needed to kill someone else who knew too much, and pointed to his childhood friend Tommy, who was sitting in the car. But at the end of the conversation, he said it was a joke, then got in the car and drove away with his friend. The police came to Tommy's house and brought him to the station for questioning. Tommy refused to cooperate with the investigation and claimed he knew nothing, but the detectives knew that wasn't true. They played him the recording of the conversation when Jack said he wanted to kill his friend. Tommy realized he was in danger and it was better to turn Jack in. Then Tommy told everything he knew. On the very evening of the girl's disappearance, Tommy and Jack were driving around the area in a car and smoking weed, and it wasn't enough for them. They were not far from Britney's house, and Jack decided to stop by there to her father for more. He approached the house, but the door was unlocked. He opened it and entered, but as it turned out, the father wasn't home. 5 minutes later, Jack returned to the car with Britney. When Tommy asked what was happening, Britney didn't answer. She lowered her gaze, and Jack said that he would now take Tommy home. He dropped off his friend and drove away with Britney. The next day, when the men met, Jack didn't comment on the situation. They went to a car wash where he thoroughly washed his car, both outside and inside, although he had never done this before. This looked strange. The car wash employee even jokingly asked why he was washing the car so thoroughly, to which Jack angrily replied that he shouldn't pry into other people's business, otherwise he risked his life, and the employee immediately backed off. Then Tommy learned about Britney's disappearance, and the puzzle came together in his head. The man asked Jack, "What did you do to that girl?" And he got furious and replied that he didn't know. He just drove her home and left, and asked not to ask questions about it anymore, if he didn't want trouble. Tommy assumed that Jack took Britney into the forest that night to rape her because Jack had planned to use Laurie's intimate services that evening, but she wasn't home. The police understood that Jack was the man they needed. They came to arrest him, and he tried to burn his car in front of them. The investigators understood that there were probably some clues in the car, and they weren't mistaken. During the search of the car, Britney's blood was found. The police went to the car wash and found out that Jack had used the vacuum cleaner to clean the car's interior. The police took the vacuum canister from the vacuum for examination, and it turned out that there was a lot of sand there, something like blood. As it turned out, it was Britney's blood. Despite all this, Jack was in no hurry to confess to kidnapping Britney or her murder. He refused to talk about this topic. The detectives asked all of Jack's acquaintances, and most were convinced that he was capable of murder. Many described him as a man ready for anything. Jack didn't work anywhere, yet he always had money. He distributed substances, and also forced drug addicts to provide him with sexual services for substances. As it turned out, after Britney's disappearance, Jack stopped a patrolman when he noticed his car in a remote area outside the city, parked on the roadside near the forest. The patrolman asked what Jack was doing in such a place, and he replied that he was looking for his dog that had run away. The search for the body focused on this area. The search involved K-9 police squads, helicopters, and volunteers, but all in vain. The investigators believed that Britney was desperately looking for someone who could drive her to her boyfriend that evening. And then Jack came, whom she knew, and out of desperation, the girl asked him to drive her and got in the car. And he decided to take advantage of the situation. He raped and killed Britney. And then a woman called the police and said that she suspected where Britney's body was. It turned out that this woman had been in Jack's captivity for several months when she was drug dependent and had to fully obey Jack in exchange for substances. During this time, the woman studied him well and knew all his secrets, where he went and what he did. He went to the same places and took her with him. Once, he showed her a place and said that it was an excellent place for burial. No one would find a body here. The detectives initially didn't believe the woman and began asking her clarifying questions. She was able to point out the place and describe that it was sandy soil. The police immediately remembered the informant's words, who told how Jack complained to him about the difficulties of burying the body in sandy soil. The woman's words inspired confidence in the police, and they headed to the indicated area for search. The territory was huge, and several days of searching yielded no success. Then experts compared the sand from the vacuum with the soil in this area and got a complete match, so they continued the search. In the end, on July 27, 2004, the dogs helped find the place where the body was. In this place, there was significantly less vegetation. The searchers stuck a long pole into the soil and pulled it out. The pole smelled of rotting flesh. Then it became clear that the body was in a pit here. It turned out to be the naked body of a young girl. On her neck was a chain with the name Britney. The detectives immediately realized that they had finally found her. The medical examiner confirmed that it was the body of Britney Gregory. He could not establish the exact cause of death because the girl was strangled and received a severe head injury from a blow with a blunt object, and it was difficult to determine what exactly caused the death. The body was in poor condition. There were no obvious signs of sexual violence on the body, but the expert did not rule out rape. Jack consulted with his lawyer and decided to make a deal with the prosecution to plead guilty for a reduced sentence. The family agreed to this deal to avoid a long, grueling trial. Britney's mother stated that she didn't want the death penalty for Jack because it would be too easy for him. The woman wanted him to rot in prison for the rest of his life, suffer, and regret what he had done. Jack told how Britney asked him to drive her to her boyfriend, and he agreed. The man drove his friend Tommy and left. With Britney. They stopped. Jack started smoking weed in front of Britney, which made the girl angry. She started yelling at him and hitting his hands. Jack lost his temper and began punching Britney in the face. He stopped only when the girl stopped moving. The man realized she was dead and buried her, but no one believed his story. According to the forensic expert's report, the girl was strangled and received a severe blow to the head, which he didn't even mention. And another important question: why was Britney undressed? The prosecution believed that this was a crime on sexual grounds. Jack was found guilty and sentenced to 30 years in prison without the right to parole. If you like my work, subscribe to the channel, support this video with a like. Let's discuss this story in the comments. Thanks everyone, and bye.